Got it.
It's always great when things work as they're supposed to work. Dr. Terrell, good to see you in the room. Susan, good to see you in the room. Dr. Hirano, great to have you with us. Dr. Jimenez, you were joining. I couldn't tell if you were on or getting on when I welcomed you, but welcome. Valerie Stopchinsky, esteemed elementary school teacher at McCall Elementary School. Great to have you, Valerie. And one of our Georgia TESOL grant recipients for a recording readers grant a few years ago. That would be a great article, Valerie. If you have that. Fantastic. Well, everyone, it is 5:30 and welcome to our session on Publish in the Georgia TESOL Journal. We are so excited to have you with us. This is a presentation by the editors of the Georgia TESOL Journal that we're very excited to have you here for. So thank you so much for joining us live. We will and are recording this, and we will send everyone who registered the recording. I'm delighted to welcome our presenters for today, who are our editors of the Georgia TESOL Journal, Dr. David Chiesa at the University of Georgia, and our associate editors, Abdul Samad Humaydan, who has just moved to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and also Ethan Trin, who is at Georgia State University, which I believe is the largest public university in the United States currently. I think that's correct. I've heard that. And also welcome Dr. Reyes from Georgia Southern. I see Dr. Reyes is in the room, and also Dr. Jennifer Pendergrass. So we have a wonderful array of folks here. I will moderate the chat. Put your questions in the chat. It's a small group. If Dr. Chiesa, if you would like to raise your hand, Dr. Chiesa, Abdul Samad, or Ethan, David, Abdul Samad, or Ethan will recognize you if they feel comfortable and want to. Otherwise, I will periodically raise my hand and bring up your questions from the chat. And I would like to hand it off to our esteemed editors. So take it away, and thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Webb. I'm going to share my screen, so hold on one second. There we go. Okay, friends, welcome to Publishing in the Georgia TESOL Journal. As Dr. Webb said, my name is Dr. David Chiesa. Please call me Dr. Dave, or just simply Dave. I do not mind. I'm a clinical assistant professor of language and literacy education here at the University of Georgia. Go Dogs, national champions, twice in a row. Just want to say, FYI. Very proud to be here at Georgia. This is my first academic post, and I'm very happy to be here today. I'm here with my two colleagues, Ethan Trin and Abdul Samad Humaydan. So what are we going to do today? Today's presentation / discussion is simply to let you know about who we are, what we do, how we think, how we conceptualize research, and how you can possibly publish in the Georgia TESOL Journal. We did not know who was going to come today, so we're going to give you some tips and tricks for those who are new to establishing research or wants to write about research, or literature reviews or pedagogical approaches, or also teaching techniques. So first, we're going to talk about who are we, right? And quick self-introductions about our research trajectories. Then I kind of want to know what your area of interest is in TESOL. Third, we'll talk about the mission statement of the Georgia TESOL Journal. Currently, this is my last semester here for being a senior editor for the Georgia TESOL Journal. And so the baton will be handed off pretty soon. And so the mission might change because the mission kind of evolves with the editors over time. But we'll tell you what we currently believe. Then we'll talk about how to do empirical articles, or how do you start from scratch, right? What kind of questions do you ask? How do you move forward? Talk about literature reviews. Then the teaching techniques. Those are kind of the three areas that we are conceptualizing as part of our journal. Then, of course, the wonderful APA, right? We'll just talk about that briefly, the submission process, and then any questions, comments, or concerns. We're cool? Awesome. And so for a lot of people who are new to publishing, I want to take a moment and just take a step back and say publishing is a wonderful journey that really lasts quite a long time. Publishing is not something that you can do overnight, unless you're Superman, right? But it takes a long time and patience. And so I want to straight up tell you that we are here as editors and associate editors to support you as much as we can throughout the process. The process of publishing, as we say here, is a rigorous and demanding process. And we are committed. The word committed is very strong because we really try and value to work with you as much as possible. We want to support you all the way through the process. The longest person that we worked with so far in the Georgia TESOL Journal is about 2.5 years for one article. That literally went back and forth 15 times between the reviewers, the editors, and the writer. So 2.5 years, the person published, we're super excited for her. However, publishing is long and arduous. Again, it's arduous. Some feedback that you might get, might be tough. Sometimes you see the feedback and you have to take a deep breath and swallow it in and just keep moving forward, right? So we say, please do not be discouraged. Hands down, do not be discouraged. Sometimes I had authors, I'm not kidding when I say this, they would call me on the telephone and say, how do I deal with this feedback? And I would say, that's okay, let's talk through it little by little. But the feedback process is all anonymous. The writers will never know who the reviewers are. And the reviewers will never, or should never know who the writers are as well. And so for the Georgia TESOL Journal and our own personal experiences, me, Ethan, and Abdul Samad, we truly believe that our job for the Georgia TESOL Journal is a mentoring journal where we support current teachers in the field or beginning researchers if you have your master's degree or you're going for your doctorate, and also novice researchers. In other words, we truly believe this is a great space to begin your journey, your academic journey to publish your articles. And so we really want to support you along the way because we do know that top tier journals, for example, TESOL Quarterly or Applied Linguistics Journal, they're tough. You're going to get some really harsh feedback. And sometimes you get denied, boom, right away, it's over. With us, we try really hard to grasp on to anything in the article that we find really valuable. Even though if the article overall it's just not there, we find something. That's our main purpose. Ethan or Abdul Samad, do you have any comments on that? No? Okay.
No, I don't. But I just want to make sure that when you send us the manuscript, that means that you are in a good hands. I can assure that. And we would try our best to provide the mentorship in terms of writing, ideas, feedback, and again, like I said, trying to rehumanize the publication process. So I hope that everyone will have the same experience that I have.
I love that word, Ethan, humanize.
Rehumanizing too.
Humanize it. So let's do a little bit of introductions and talk about our research trajectories. And this might give you some kind of idea of how the publishing process works if you're new to it, right? So me, like I said, Dr. Dave, I love publishing. I love writing. I literally like to go to Starbucks and just write and drink coffee. Maybe I'm just caffeinated so much, I don't know, but I love it. One piece, and let me give you one thing that I did that I love so much. I started in 2019. So when I was living in Uzbekistan is a country right north of Afghanistan. And I was working for the Ministry of Public Education, and I was redoing the entire country's language assessment system. So I literally built up a huge assessment system from scratch. I worked with about 250 people. We created the national standards, blah, 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 blah. But as part of that process, my job was also to go to the schools throughout the country and talk to people about the new processes, the new textbooks, and new assessment system. And what I noticed there was people have no idea about assessment or language assessment literacy, as we're called. So I did a research project. So, just started, just collected data. I got my IRB. I did my, my ethics site. I was pretty cool. I was good. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to present at AAAL. AAAL is the American Association for Applied Linguistics Conference. So I applied 2019, presented it, pretty good. We're good to go. My advice here is I love presenting at conferences. And in my conference presentation, it's kind of the way my paper that I want to work on is set up. And then I get feedback from people. I'm like, they like it. I'm like, okay, I can change things here and there. I then took that presentation. I made a paper. I drafted a paper out of it. Then I sent it off for publication. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, literally with the Studies in Language Testing, top tier journal in language and testing. And amazing experience. I had 5 people work with me on this manuscript. It was amazing, but lots of back and forth. Guess what happened? In 2023, this semester, it's finally going to come out. Huzzah. So this is the in-press version. It's called Discerning the Language Assessment Literacy of BFL Teachers in Uzbekistan, a social and historical teacher cognition inquiry. It took me a long time to go through this process, but I was doing my job. I was teaching teachers. I was building the assessment system. I became a professor at University of Georgia. I had a life. At the same time, I was trying to publish, and it took over many, many years. Again, the publishing process is not so fast all the time. That's what I'm trying to get at with my experience. Ethan?
Can everyone hear me? Yes, okay, cool. Hi everyone, my name is Ethan Tran. I use Datum as my pronoun. I have the privilege to work at Georgia TESOL Journal with wonderful Dave, Dr. Dave. Hi, Dave. And associate editor Abdul Samad. I think that is my the second year or something. So would love to work with you all in the future as well. So I have a lot of story, but I think focusing on the publication, I would say that it takes a lot of time, but you have to trust the process. And I would say that publishing a paper, it just take a lot of trust, faith, energy, sometimes tears, and sometimes it takes a lot of caffeine. So you can see that in the paper, in the screen. So that is a paper that I wrote for a special issue for Journal of Homosexuality, because my work is focusing on queer and queerness in TESOL. So I sent out the proposal to the special issue in 2019, and I think it took like 2 years to publish the paper. And fortunately, I submitted a paper and I got the minor feedback. I mean, I think like just minor revision, but I have to go through like 5 reviewers in order to publish this paper. So again, like I said at the beginning, I believe in the publication process should be rehumanizing for those people who write, who work, especially in academia. So here it is. And I hope that, as an associate editor, I would love to continue mentoring and sharing what I have during the publication process.
Thank you, Dr. Dave and Ethan. It's a pleasure to work with such a wonderful and great editorial team for the Georgia TESOL. Hi, everybody. This is Abdul Samad Humaydan. I'm a lecturer at the Department of Linguistics at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And I would like to share just a short story about my experience with publishing and publications. And what I would like to reiterate is the idea of a journey, a process where it takes one point and moves into several months. And in this short story, I was working with a faculty at Southern Illinois University, where I pursued my graduate school, my master's, and I'm also finishing a PhD there. And what we did, we submitted, we received actually a call for edited volume on language assessment. We worked on the proposal of a chapter. We submitted that. We got the acceptance letter, and then we took almost like 3 months to write the manuscript. Then we submitted the paper. It took like almost 2 months for the review, because we were reviewing other colleagues' manuscripts, and colleagues were reviewing our manuscripts. And then we ended up taking another 2 months for the revisions and what Dr. Dave was saying, the back and forth conversation and communication. And then we ended up finalizing that like in 1 to 2 months. Technically, it's like, again, 10 to 13 months. So it's the process and the journey. So, okay, and then moving from there, from my story and my colleagues' stories on research, is coming into the areas in TESOL. At this time, the 3 major themes in the areas of research and publications in TESOL focus on 3 tenets: the theory, the practice, and the research. And when we talk about theory, we're talking about second language studies, and that can include almost all languages as second language studies. But maybe for here, we are focusing on ESL and English language learners and English learners. Also, the second tenet is the practice, where we are talking about the teaching, curriculum, designing, policy, and then we ended up with the research, where we are talking about quantitative, qualitative, mixed method, and different paradigms and research in the area. Next, please. Yes.
So I'm going to jump in here, and you've heard about my interest in language assessment literacy. You heard about Ethan's and queer homosexuality in TESOL. You heard about Abdul Samad's also in assessment. We're interested to know, what areas are you interested in? What things do you like in TESOL, or what questions do you have in TESOL? We kind of want to know who in our audience, what your backgrounds are, what your interests are. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. I'm going to put the link in the chat box, and then go to the Jamboard and tell us what your background area is, if you do not mind. Do it. There, go ahead, my friends. We just want to see who and what topics you guys are interested in.
Dave, would it be okay if you share the screen where people put the answer then?
Yep, doing that right now.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Content language integration, ratio linguistics. Love it. Funds of knowledge. I can go over here. Wonderful. Strategies. Ooh, I love it. Facilitative language learning, anxiety. Ooh. Today we talk about anxiety in my SLA class today. K-12 strategies, refugee background students and academic literacies. Linguistic identities. Ah, valid, meaningful assessment. Another assessment person. Sweet. Love that. Research, translanguaging, great. Humanizing family engagement with multilingual families, implications for teacher education. Deafness and multilingualism, very cool. Ethan, what kind of themes, and Abdul Samad, what kind of themes do you see here? Abdul Samad, what do you see?
I see multilingualism and English learners.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing what topics that you're interested in. And I just want to let you know that everything I see here is very appropriate for the Georgia TESOL Journal. And we would love to work with you on any of these topics. So before I even move on, I do know that a lot of you are researchers already, which is pretty cool. So if you do have anything already in these topics that you're like, you know what, I don't want to start from scratch, I have something, send it to us now. Send it to us, I'll read through it. I can give you feedback right away, just personally to say if this is appropriate or not for the journal. And then if it is, we can move forward and send out to our reviewers. So if you have something right now, please send it off. This is pretty cool. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to keep this for our information. So in case we want to do any special issues in the future, we know what you guys are interested in. Wonderful. I'm going to share my screen again, back to my PowerPoint. I see people laughing, smiling. That's awesome. Okay. Sweet. Ethan, go ahead. Mission statement. Who are we? What are we doing?
Thank you. Can you move on to the next slide? So I think, based on what you share in the Jamboard, I think that is pretty much kind of like aligning with Georgia TESOL Journal mission. So we particularly thinking about like the practitioner-oriented, and we think about like how we can, bring the top quality paper in the manuscript to support for teachers, teacher educator, researcher, administrator, and graduate students. So it's pretty much like broad in terms of like the audience and readership. And the mission that we are trying to do is, like we said, support and mentor authors who are teaching, who are conducting research, as well as studying and teaching in language teaching context. So in the journal, so we focus on like theory, research, pedagogy, and educational policy related to the teaching of TESOL, or English to speak of other languages.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. So all of the topics that you shared earlier in the Jamboard, I think that is kind of like perfect fit to what the journal is looking for.
Thank you. So how do we do this, Gal? Now let's get to the nitty-gritty, right? How do you actually do this, and what kind of things are we looking for? This is the meat. So we basically, I believe, prove now that we're here to work with you, support you. So how do we move forward? The first type of submission we have for the journal is called empirical research or literature reviews. I'm going to read directly from what it says from the website, so there's no miscommunication, right? Empirical research or literature reviews, both, this is one category, can be between 15 to 25 double-spaced pages, including references and appendices. Now, I'm very honest here. Please do not go over 25 pages. We have had somebody submit 110 pages. Please do not do that. We will send that back. Research-based articles should be driven by pedagogical problems and research questions that address those problems, aka questions are very important. We encourage the submission of classroom-based and reflective teaching research. Because we are a state journal, that a lot of teachers do read the journal. We want a lot of classroom discussions and inquiries. These articles should show evidence of rigorous scholarship. Do you see that? I didn't just say scholarship, I said rigorous scholarship. Make an original contribution to the field of ESOL education, contain ample references, and provide what? Readers with insights that they can then generalize to their own educational settings. So then let's say you've never done research before. Where do you, you're like, how do you begin? Where do you begin? So what I like to do is the following. I really, with all my research projects, I always begin with 10 questions, right? And this is something I really value, and I recommend you kind of answer these questions for yourself if you want to begin the process. Number one, what are your research questions, right? Number two, how, in those questions, what terms must you operationally define to address your inquiry? So within the question, how do you define your terms? Because when you define your terms, that then tells us how the method is going to be moving, how you're going to move forward with your research. 3, what existing research or theory informs your study, right? And so name very specific books, articles, and theories. 4, what are the sources of your data, right? What is it? Is it humans? If there are sources, are going to get IRB approval? If it is corpus-based, what are your sources? 5, if you do plan to use human subjects, right? Who will you study? How will you obtain their permission to be in your study? And this is very complicated, especially for classroom teachers, right? And especially in the K-12 system, right? Working with children. 6, how will you obtain your data? Through interviews, observations, questionnaires, surveys, which are questionnaires and interviews together. 7, will your data be collected quantitatively, qualitatively, both? These are things to think about. How will you analyze your data? You're like, what research traditions are you using from? Are you coming from a psychometric research tradition, a naturalistic inquiry, or even action research? So action research is something I can do a whole presentation on it for teachers about how they can use that conceptualization for their studies. And also, what kind of problems do you anticipate? So this is kind of 10 questions I like to use for myself for all my projects. I literally use this sheet for all my projects, just to go through and kind of, where do I start? How do I begin? And so because of time, we don't need discussion, but if you were to conduct a research project, right, on an area of interest that you mentioned in the Jamboard just now, what would be some questions you would like to ask or answer, right? Let's try to think of questions that have not been asked or answered before. Again, although we're the Georgia TESOL Journal, which is a state journal, we do want papers that move the field forward, right? We want new ideas, innovation. So that's something to think about. Your questions are so important. Sometimes when I read articles right away, when they get submitted to our journal, first, I will actually, if they're empirical papers, I will actually skip the literature review. I won't even read the literature review. I go straight to the research questions to see, are they there, right? And then I go, okay, those are the questions. Do they actually tell me how they define it? And then do the methods actually match the questions? Are they actually trying to answer their own questions? So I can't even stress to you how important the questions are if you submit to this category. Ethan or Abdul Samad, do you want to jump in on that? Okay. I get the thumbs up. Good. Okay, Ethan.
Can I say something, Dave?
Yeah.
So I think, one of the idea that you can think about writing a manuscript, responding to the questions. I think, the list that Dave have is very useful. But I think, if when you write and then you need to have another set of eyes to think about if, this manuscript is readable, is comprehensible, or, something that, it is give the readers some sort of questions. So I think, have another set of eye would be useful. And sometimes, when we write, we probably forgot how to check the spelling. We forgot how to do the grammars, for example, some sort of very simple things that it could be avoided. If you have another friends who actually can be a proofreaders for you.
Again, for those who are new to research, though, and those who are new to empirical writing, a lot of questions I have from my friends. I was just in New Zealand talking just about research with my 2 really close colleagues. I had all these ideas about what kinds of things I want to do, and they're like, "So, but Dave, what's your question?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, what am I actually? What's the phenomenon I'm trying to actually address?"
That's
right?
true.
So for this area of this submission type, this is the most important thing in my opinion, is really having a clear, well-defined research question, and then having your method appropriate to the question.
And I want to add something into that, because you have to really think about the different category of the manuscript, the different category that the manuscript is going to be submitted, right? Because for example, if you think about empirical research type, so they have 15 to 20 pages. So you have to really think about the research questions. You won't be able to put 5 research questions in one manuscript. It
But we
happened.
we have seen, how many was that last time we saw? 8 questions in the last one?
5,
Yeah,
probably
so
more than 5.
again, we'll get someone that gives us an 8-question paper and it's 15 pages long. You're like, okay, which is fine. But then we mentor that person. So right now we're working with that author as we currently speak.
Yeah. So anyway, so that is kind of like the something that you keep in mind. We only have 15 to 20 pages, and we want you to think deeply about the content rather than go broadly. Does that make sense? So, okay.
So once you have your questions, then there's a literature review, right? And we also have a literature review paper. This is something I want to share with you guys. I hope it's beneficial for scholars in the field already and for anyone. So let me stop sharing my screen and show you through the website that I find so helpful, so helpful. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to reshare to my desktop. Oh, good, there's Chrome. Okay. The website's called TERF, the International Research Foundation for English Language Education. Georgia TESOL has no connection to TERF. I'm not promoting them. They're a nonprofit. This is just something I know that's very, very helpful. And so on this website, let me move my screen. There you go. Go to the resources section. In the resources section, scroll down to the reference list. When you click on the reference list, it's pretty cool because, resources, reference list. It's spinning. I love it. The one time during the presentation, it takes forever to upload. Are you kidding me? I'm going to redo that. There it is. Oh, don't say it's down now.
I guess let's just move forward.
Yeah, I mean, of course this happens during the presentation, right?
Of course, yes, definitely.
What I was going to show you was the following. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go back to the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Arg, pirates.
But I mean, like, we can actually put the link in the chat so everybody can see it.
Yeah.
Let me put it that.
Let me go. So basically, what this page is, and I can't believe this is happening, it literally has a list of about 100 different topics. And then let's say, for example, you're interested in, I saw translanguaging was one of the people that you put on the Jamboard. You click on translanguaging, and then a reference list will come up of all the most recent seminal works in the field. So it gives you the entire reference list. Usually they're about 10 to 15 pages long with all the references there. And it's really helpful. Once you have that reference list, you can then go to those resources and start reading. And that's a great resource for writing a literature review. One author that we had in Georgia TESOL Journal, her name is Miss Shuang Fu. She used the TERF reference list. She started from scratch and she wrote her article in a year, and then she submitted it and she got it published.
Dave.
Yep.
Hey, can I share the screen? I think that it works.
Oh, it works now.
Yes.
Okay.
Right here. And right here. So I'm gonna put the link in the chat so everybody can see it briefly. So that is kind of like the reference list that I think Dave mentioned. So if you go click on the link that I share with you in the chat and then click on this, then it's gonna pop up with do you see the reference list here?
It downloads. You have to upload it.
It's downloaded. It's downloaded. Stop
Yep.
sharing and sharing again. So you can see that it is kind of by the list, the bibliography. So if you are interested in about language classroom research, teacher research, and research methodology, so that you can see that this kind of by the list. And then you can just if whatever journal, whatever article that fits with your research questions, then you can just like look for that. Right? So
Yep. And Ethan, at the top of that page, what year was it last updated? So they
they say last updated in 2015.
okay, so every list has a different update. It's literally 100+ lists, y'all. And everything that was on the Jamboard, by the way, everything I saw, even racial linguistics, has a reference list for you. Okay. I'm gonna keep moving forward.
Yeah, keep moving forward.
Hop,
Yes.
hop. In Uzbek, hop, hop. When you do your literature review for your empirical paper or your literature review paper itself, there are two things I kind of want to keep in mind that I look for. Or the first thing on the left, what's happening there? There's a discussion happening there, right? The way I see literature reviews, it's literally a conversation in writing. And so the more you read in the field that you're interested in, you're going to see the same authors' names and years come up over and over again. That tells me when to stop reading, because you can literally read for a long, 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 long time. But once you see the same things happening, the same discussion happening, stop, you're good to go. Those are the ones I want you to work with. Then from that conversation, you know, just like you talk with friends, you know, there's some tea. What's the tea going on? What's happening? What's the gap, right? And the gap can be literature gap, conceptual gap in the literature, time gap, population gap. So for example, in language assessment literacy, the project I had, right? All over the world, people are researching language assessment literacy with different populations. No one was researching Uzbekistan teachers and their language assessment literacy. That was a population gap that I saw in the literature. Also methodological gap. Again, what's the conversation happening in the literature? And then do you see the same names coming up? If you do, stop. What's the gap? Go for it. And so if you're also new to classroom research and new to research in general, right? You're like, okay, I got my questions. I've read a lot. I have my ideas. How do I actually move forward with the methods and analysis? Like, what do I actually do? How do I do this? On the left side is a book I highly recommend for classroom researchers. It's called Exploring Second Language Classroom Research, a comprehensive guide with Noonan and Bailey. Fantastic, very straightforward, nicely written. They go through all different kinds of data collection processes for classroom teachers, not just classroom teachers. Let me repeat, language teachers. Okay, that's key. And they talk you through the process of writing your research. It's pretty amazing. And then on the right side, you see all these little things, all these little books. I'll be honest with you. I'm more quantitative, like I'm more statistics. I like that kind of stuff, right? And so I'm very, very kind of novice to qualitative research. And so I got these little books. They're very, very small, from APA that talks about different methods in qualitative studies. And so right now I'm reading autoethnography right now. And I'm loving it. The chapters are short. The books are fantastic. In this book called Narrative Analysis, Conceptual Foundations for the Method, Study Design, Data Analysis, Writing the Manuscript. So all these books from APA talk about how to actually write the manuscript for this specific method. Awesome, huh? And so if you're like, okay, so let me see some empirical studies in the Georgia TESOL Journal. In the journal, the one exemplar study I believe that we've had for the past 4 years is Tugba Nurdogan Fartor's. She talked about mitigation devices that she used as a non-native speaker. That's a very heavy term, but that's what she chose. She did peer supervisory context with her friend in Turkey, and they used English language. And she was really interested to see what kind of mitigation devices she was using in her language to support teacher development of her colleague. And so that was a fantastic article. Please read it if you have a general, if you're interested in empirical studies. So again, for the Georgia TESOL Journal, empirical papers and literature reviews are one submission type. Now we have a second submission type.
Thank you, Dr. Dave. And for the second type of submissions, we're talking about pedagogical practices, programs, policies, and perspective. And I think I will kind of do the same, reading the text from the journal. So those types of submissions are to 15 again, and 20 double-spaced pages. That's including the references and appendices. And based on the current and also emergent trends in the fields of the TESOL, these articles present a well-argued viewpoints regarding the theory, research, pedagogy, and also educational policy. But also to focus here, when we are talking about pedagogical practices, programs, policies, and perspectives, in these aspects, it's not like the empirical research where the focus, there is a big question that we are trying to answer and to carry out. Here we are doing more not the question itself. And also another thing is some of the analysis of the approaches for specific students, populations, curricular changes, pilot studies, and any other discussions that are interested to the readership of Georgia TESOL Journal. If I may move to the, yes. So, and then we can talk about recent trends, because we are talking about this type of submissions. And in this case, we have, if you can, as you can see, on the left side of the screen, there is a quote, and that's, as teachers, I think we forgot that October is always a challenging month. Practice self-care, and that has been one of the themes and the areas of research, and especially as we all know, during the pandemic, there was a big call for teachers to really take care of themselves, besides also taking care of their students. So on the right side, you will see at the top, there is a photo where we are talking about virtual reality. And one of the interesting things is I am doing my dissertation on virtual reality. Professor Dr. Dave also, no, you're fine. Dr. Dave is also doing some virtual realities, and we as editors now started the conversation, we can work together on a project. And that's, I think, one of the great benefits of working with such a great team of editors and such a mentor like Dr. Dave. And also at the bottom of the page and the photo, again, it's talking about technology and bringing technology to the conversation, as technology has been taking an important place during the last few years, but also they're not replacing teachers, they are not replacing pedagogy, they are helping with teaching and learning.
Great. Again, these are trends that we have seen in Georgia TESOL Journal and TESOL in general. There are a lot more, but this is what we have seen.
Okay, I think that's Ethan.
So overall, the journal does aim for inclusivity, meaning that we do see trends across all educational levels, from pre-K to high school, university, as well as adult education and workplace literacy settings. So we see trends across all different areas, and we invite all pedagogical practices piece from all different areas. Something that I'm really interested in seeing more actually is the youngie, the really, really young learners, pre-K. That's something I'm interested in, by the way. And so this is a wonderful exemplar piece that we have found for the pedagogical practices piece. And this exemplar article is called Theater as a Means for Teaching a Second Language. Now, do you remember when I said it took somebody 2.5 years to write an article and it's gone through 15 rounds? Not only did it go through 15 rounds, but it also went through 6 different reviewers. So this piece came out finally. So we worked really hard. The reviewers gave incredible feedback, very succinct, wonderful, straightforward feedback, and it changed dramatically. And I love how she can now, who was an undergraduate student, by the way, at UGA. So she was an undergrad student who was a theater major, theater, Spanish, and TESOL triple major. Ethan?
So I would, share with you briefly about like teaching technique techniques. This section, this category, approximately 500 to 2,000 words, all inclusive. So we're thinking about like, how, what kind of teaching techniques that, you are using in the classroom. And we're thinking about like, the practicality and applicability that, the teachers or the readers, when they read your paper, then they would be able to think about how to situate or replicate your teaching techniques in their own classroom. So that is pretty much.
And also a trend that we're seeing is lots of technology.
And that
technology supports the teaching and learning spaces. So we would love to see more stuff on technology in the teaching techniques section. Let me just say that one issue that we have seen so far in teaching techniques is, okay, our acceptance rate for the journal has dropped from 99% to about 48%, is it? Because many people just love submitting teaching techniques because it is a much shorter paper than the empirical articles and or pedagogical practices pieces. But sometimes they write it as a literature review. And so we had to say, no, we want the step-by-step process. What can teachers actually take into their classrooms based on, what you found to be valuable in the field? And so an exemplar piece from the journal is by a woman named Binta, who's now, although she at the time wrote for Department of Applied Linguistics and ESL at Georgia State University, she actually is now assistant professor in Columbia at New York at Hunter College. I just mentioned that because one of our colleagues on the call is from New York right now. So if you're interested in talking to her about her piece, it'd be fantastic. So she talked about, check it out. PowerPoint and YouTube. We all know PowerPoint and YouTube. It's nothing new, but she looked at it from a very different perspective. And she led us through literally step-by-step process on how teachers can actually use recording audio slides in PowerPoint. And it's just, I got lots of wonderful feedback from this article. Again, the teaching technique piece, it's current things that you've done in your classroom that you have found valuable that you want to share with the Georgia TESOL community, something that can be new and innovative and creative. That's what we're looking for in this piece. And it's not long, it's 2,000 words maximum. Abdul Samad?
Okay, so after going through the different types of submissions that we are expecting, and I will be going through the steps of submissions. Yes, okay. So the first thing when an author or a potential author is logging in and creating an account, they get into this page. The first section on the top on the left, it's asking you to choose which type of publication you are targeting. Your paper, in which category does it go under? So you would choose either if it's empirical, pedagogical, or teaching techniques. And then we have a list of kind of reminders to make sure we are friendly reminding our authors about these points. One of them to click on a Google form, and before submitting the manuscript, there are some information we are requiring. So we would need to see that. A cover letter that's telling us how the manuscript is fitting within the Georgia TESOL scope, if the submission has been previously published or under consideration for another journal or another venue. And just to make
Abdul Samad, can I jump in really quick?
Please.
The cover letter I find very, very, very valuable for me as an editor, because I will read the cover letter, then I will briefly skim the article, and then I will really think clearly about which reviewer can really read the paper and give the best feedback possible.
Mm.
So I match really well with the article content with the reviewer, and all our reviewers are hands down fantastic. I can't say, but some people on this call might be a reviewer or two, just FYI. They're amazing people who have such wonderful knowledge and skills in the area. So these people are getting the best reviewers that I know. Keep going,
Thank
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Thank you, Dr. Dave. Yes, that's very crucial about the cover letter. So that can also help us with the logistics side of recruiting the reviewers who have the similar content area and research methodology. Then there are something about the APA style. We are trying to make sure we are following the 7th edition, talking also about the illustration, the figures, they are in the appropriate place in the document, not just at the end, and also making sure about the stylistic guidelines that we see as a journal, and we would love the authors to follow. So then there is a little box at the bottom if the author would like to share something with the editors or the editorial board. So that's the submission, but also something to communicate in a kind of informal way before they hit submission. Then next at the top, you will see number 2, uploading the submission. That's the manuscript. Then going to number 3 at the top, entering the metadata, that's the information of the author, and then just the confirmation and the submission. Thank you.
Something else that I would like to mention is that it's all blind. So we really do hope that you can, as you go through this checklist, you can make sure your paper is blind reviewed. But if you don't do it, we will still do it on our end. We will not send out your paper until it gets blind. So privacy, very, very important. This is what the Google form looks like. Very straightforward, very simple. It provides us more information about you and your interest and what you, your trajectory. And as Abdul Samad said, I know this can be tough. I know, but we do adhere to APA 7th edition formatting. And so if you need any resources on this, please let us know. We have lots of links and we can help you with that information as well. A lot of authors do not adhere to APA, and I'm very thankful to the reviewers who are very strict about it. And they're like, no, you got to adhere to APA. So that's part of the process as well, because it's part of our professional world as TESOL academics. And so this is our most recent issue. So if you're just interested in you're like, oh, empirical papers, pedagogical practices, teaching techniques, please go ahead and read the most recent issue called Teaching with Intentionality, Language Educators as Transformative Intellectuals and Reflective Practitioners. We have found this to be a wonderful article, has some many wonderful articles I think will be beneficial for you and your future career. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask for any questions, comments, or concerns. And then if you don't, we look forward to reading your work. And please reach out to us at journal@georgiatesol.org if you do have any questions that you don't want to ask now. But I do want to say, though, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I do want to say, if you have something right now, if you're like, I have a literature review, I really just want to go for it. Please, let's go. Let's do this. You're like, but I'm a PhD student. I don't know. I've never published. No, send it. I'm an MA student. Doesn't matter. Send it. The way to get started is just to do it. But again, we spent the whole first 20 minutes talking about our backgrounds and our interests, and the experience is because we know it takes time. So let's get started now. Huzzah.
Thank you all so much for being here, and thanks to our wonderful editors for this really practical and also inspiring presentation. I do not see any questions in the chat, but we are a small group, so folks are welcome to come off mute, I think, and ask questions. We've got a few minutes. I would just like to take the point of privilege as Georgia TESOL president of recognizing our past president, Dr. Jennifer Pendergrass, who's on the call, and also recognizing her role and others' role as well in getting our journal and in investing in the resources to get our journal and get such talented editors and reviewers, and so that we have a journal that can build transformational intellectuals and reflective practitioners. Truly, in our state, we need to work together, P16 and beyond, to transform the experience of English learners and ensure that it is effective and supportive across the whole range of experiences, whether in public schools in K-12, whether at our colleges and universities, whether in pre-K, or whether in the adult realm. So the goal of our journal is to transform practices. And I can think of no better way to do it than to work together to put great research out there in the hands of people who are actually doing the work. So,
Can I make
yes.
one last thing? I am super excited today to announce that the person who will be taking over as senior editor is currently in the room. There are possibly two, but right now there's one for sure, Dr. Eliana Hirano. And I would like to have her just say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for introducing me, Dave. So I'm Eliana Hirano. I work at Berry College in Northwest Georgia. I'm an associate professor of teacher education. I'm an applied linguist. Dave and I come from the same program at Georgia State, actually. So we had a great time there. And I'm very, very excited to be working with the journal and with the junior editors also. I have been in contact with Georgia TESOL in the past, with Dr. Pendergrass, and I just, I'm really passionate about this. So I'm very, very honored to be a part of the journal.
Thank you.
Welcome, welcome. What a great piece of announcement to be able to make in this particular context. And I just am thrilled that that you are going to be taking on this amazing role for the journal. Looking at the last few issues, I made a comment in the chat about one article that was particularly influential in my context. But so many of these articles are influential and are having an effect on not only teaching practices, but also at the policy level, at the program design level, in terms of, just so many aspects. I'd love to hear from other folks as we're getting ready to close out. We have 4 minutes before we will end punctually at 6:30. But if anyone else would like to make a comment as a participant, as a board member, or as just any of the editors that have any final thoughts.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you very much for this very insightful chat that we just had. I really loved the resources that you shared, especially the research, the resource for bibliography lists. I actually am going to ask for your permission to send this to my supervisor because she's currently teaching in the Masters of English Teaching in the Universidad Pablo de Olavide for pre-service teachers. And that is actually where my data stems from. I am researching my supervisor's students' attitudes towards their own linguistic identity because they're supposedly monolingual Spanish speakers, but they are teachers in training for English as a second language. And we believe, my supervisor and I believe, that the first thing that they need to do is have a space to reflect on what makes a person bilingual. Are languages really in watertight compartments, as said in the literature, or are languages more a question of, where you pinpoint yourself? Because myself, I come from a multicultural family. My father is from Spain, my mom's from Iowa. I grew up multilingual, and I never really knew, what kind of speaker I was. And until I started researching on bilingualism, and I simply saw that I was languaging. I wasn't necessarily, I speak 3 languages, English, Spanish, and German, named languages. And I've become very, very interested in the topic of translanguaging because I believe it is a lot more inclusive, especially to speakers of English that come from a different linguistic background that isn't the monolingual native speaker, that utopian idea that we present as the ideal teacher of English, right? So I really think that, I'm really interested in this type of development of linguistic identity, and I would love to write an article based on the data that I have, but I'm in the initial stages, I'm afraid. I don't have anything to present, but I really like how, what I'm reading about right now kind of seems to share the values that have been shared today. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that comment. I will just remark that it's a former, I'm a foreign language retread who has, who moved about 12 or 13 years ago into the ESOL sphere. And I just want to remark from my previous context that monolingualism is something that can be cured, and that so many of us work diligently to try to cure. So anyway. Y'all, with no further ado, then it is 6:29. I am going to end the recording. Again, thank you very much, Dr. Dave. Thank you, Abdul Samad. Thank you, Ethan. Dr. Hirano, such a pleasure to hear this great announcement this evening. And so good to see the faces of all of the board members who joined us, and also all of our potential Georgia TESOL Journal authors who are on this call. This journal is a journal that is dedicated to helping you build your skills, share your knowledge and your insights and your research, and transform practice and policy in our state and beyond. So thank you for being here, and have a wonderful evening.
Hey, Susan Mann, we want some of your work.